Yoshi's Island wins an award for simultaneously being the best platformer and worst babysitting simulator of 1995. Yoshi's Island is a colorful platformer that was released for the Super Nintendo in 1995 and again for the Game Boy in 2002. You know what else happened in 1995 and 2002? O.J. Simpson was found innocent and Star Wars Episode 2 was released, but I'll let you figure out which one happened when. There are a lot of things that I remember fondly from my childhood, like Linkin Park, Yoshi's Island, Naruto, and being a social outcast. But mostly Yoshi's Island. But is it really possible that this simple platformer has given people 23 years of fun? First off, a little backstory, said Napoleon's massage therapist. Yoshi's Island starts with a cute little cinematic depicting a stork carrying 12 pounds of freshly made baby across the morning sky. But suddenly, the stork gets fucking murked by a witch and drops an entire baby into the ocean.
Give me tendies!
Many historians believe that this is where the tale of Moses began. Baby Mario then plummets to the ground at terminal velocity and lands on Yoshi's back, breaking his entire fucking spine in the process. Along with him drops a map, but unfortunately, Yoshi can't read. Meanwhile, Kamek is sitting in one of his
7 Koopa hotels
and realizes that he got the wrong baby, so he sends his toadies to go capture the other one, proving that within even hours of being born, nobody loves Luigi. After the long and arduous process of realizing that they can't digest babies, the Yoshis decide to relive their high school track days and deliver the baby to its home via a relay system. And with that, Yoshi's Island begins.
Doing it well.
Yoshi's Island starts you off with a tutorial level where you're introduced to many wonders of the titular island. Tit. This is a really basic platformer with really basic platforming controls. You run, you jump, you lick, and you launch the corpses of your enemies at each other as a grim reminder that Yoshi is not fucking around. Speaking of eggs, you can also create different kinds of eggs depending on how many times they bounce across the surface, with 1 bounce being yellow and 2 bounces being red. Yellow eggs create coins when they hit something, and red eggs create little star boys. Look at them go. Now that I think about it, the different colored eggs are a lot like bananas, which are also a lot like stoplights. Yellow means go, green means stop, and red means... what? Holding down A lets you pull a Bubsy and float in the air, and hopping on enemies gives you a boost when you jump, which coincides with the American philosophy of pushing other people down in order to succeed. There's also a ground pound that you can do where Yoshi hovers in the air for a minute before pulling a Detroit smash on the ground. Your health bar is replaced by a star meter, which is akin to the life expectancy of a peasant in the Middle Ages in the fact that they both max out at 30. Yoshi can pick up stars to increase his health and add to the total score for the level. However, if he gets hit, his health drops like a rock in a pool full of bad habits. And thus, the screaming begins. Whenever you get hit, Baby Mario floats around in a bubble and screams louder than the bad brake pads on the 2004 Chevy Tahoe with the sexy lady window stickers and the bumper sticker that says, "My kid can beat up your honor student," that just cut you off on the freeway, which I think is an effective form of birth control. Once your star meter reaches 0, Kamek's army of Melvins swoops in and steals your baby faster than scarlet fever in an old frontier town.
Waiting until we see a moment where we can actually abduct the child.
There are also flowers and red coins to collect, which add to the total score of the level. Pressing select brings up an item screen where you can view your score and select items to use. Some items add stars, give random bonuses, or allow Yoshi to exercise his Second Amendment right by using a high-capacity, fully automatic assault watermelon.
War never changes.
Most of the levels have tulips, which give you stars whenever you commit ritual sacrifice and spit an enemy into them. Some of the levels also contain huts, which you need a key to open. Once you commit borderline breaking and entering, you meet the bandit, who challenges you to a minigame. If you win, you get an item or a power-up, but if you lose, Yoshi passes out and wakes up a few hours later in a bathtub full of ice with stitches along his waist. In some levels, you can meet a family of traveling Huffin' Puffins, and after you dropkick the mother Puffin, she runs away and you get to collect her babies. They're really really useful because they travel in a boomerang fashion when they're thrown, which means that, unlike their mother, they actually come back. You see, they're called Huff and Puffins because they huff and they puff and they huff and they puff and they huff and they puff and they huff and they puff. And of course, we have the absolute best boy, Poochie. Certain levels contain transformation bubbles where Yoshi reenacts Animorphs and turns into different vehicles, including the Red October, Lightning McQueen, Thomas the Tank Engine, Mole Man,
No one's gay for Mole Man.
and Simcopter. The only time Baby Mario was ever worth his weight in Pampers is when he collects a star, turning him into the Boss Baby and making him invincible for a few seconds. Even though Yoshi's been sober for years now, sometimes he relapses, and this is where the fuzzies come in. Touching a fuzzy causes the entire world to distort as Yoshi goes on a trip through Just like in any Mario game, there are lots of weird-ass enemies. You got your standard Shy Guys and Koopas, but you also got Spiky Boys, Lantern Larrys, Cultural Appropriation Boys, and a whole multitude of Thick Boys. Each world contains 2 bosses that are based on enemies that you face in said worlds, so let's talk about them. World 1 is a really basic world with easy levels and enemies. It's so easy, in fact, that the final boss can't even hurt you. The other boss of this world is Bert the Bashful, one of the aforementioned Thick Boys that you kill by knocking his pants down. If this world were a popular children's dessert, it would be a cinnamon brown sugar Pop-Tart. World 2 is pretty much like World 1, except it's a little bit harder and everything has a green tinge to it, like the empty bowl that's been sitting in your room for 4 months and has grown enough organisms to host its own democratic election. Both of the bosses in this world are ghosts, and that's all I have to say about that. World 3 takes place in Florida and has you running through the Everglades fighting angry monkeys and natives like a Floridian George of the Jungle. And I also noticed while I was putting this together, just in case you needed more evidence that Yoshi is a stone cold killer, you can just straight up drown a fucking monkey.
And then there's Chunky. He's dead.
The first boss of this world is a frog that swallows you whole and forces you to destroy him from the inside out, like a group of sleeper agents in a country's capital. Or Ebola. And fun fact, this boss was my first introduction to Vor. The final boss for this world is a giant piranha plant tentacle monster, which is also the only boss in the game that you can kill before the fight even starts.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
Everything in World 4 takes place during an eternal sunset, like Cloud City from Star Wars, and it has you fighting a big round boy and Anguirus from the Godzilla franchise. For World 5, Yoshi takes a field trip to Hoth and gets repeatedly murdered by Happy Feet. Much like my uncle, or your mom, the first boss of this world is a hairy slug with a weak heart. The final boss for World 5 is a giant raven who you fight on the fucking moon.
You take the moon, and you take the moon, and you take the moon, and you take...
And finally, we come to World 6. Hell.
This is where all the bad Yoshis go. Right next to the liberals.
After drowning the ultimate Spiky Boy and cleansing him in fire, you make it to the final castle. Baby Bowser's castle. Once you make it into the castle, you're forced to navigate the treacherous hallways while Kamek throws PlayStation controllers at you. And finally, you make it to Baby Bowser, who's a whiny little bitch and the sole justification for why you should beat your kids.
Hey, I wanna ride the Yoshi.
Eventually, you put this baby boy to sleep like a racehorse with a broken leg. But then, surprise! Kamek uses magic and turns him into an even bigger baby instead. The perspective in this fight is more confusing than a Black Klansman, but at least the music is cool. Like, listen to this shit. After enough hits, Baby Bowser is finally aborted once and for all. Baby Mario is reunited with Green Mario, and Yoshi gets an Uber back to the forest and takes a much-deserved stress nap. Whoa, hold up. Tentacles? Vor? Hairy slugs? What kind of disgusting kinksters made this game? If Yoshi's Island were a piece of cookware, it would be a stainless steel knife. It holds up after 20 years without any spots and it still does exactly what you ask it to. But it could probably use a wash.